We are back with the 13th episode of Power, Possibilities, Peace of Mind. And for those of you who I haven't met yet, my name is Tiffany Hauser. I am a leadership coach and corporate coach. And I work with companies and individuals who are in the space of leadership, potential, engagement, diversity and inclusion, mindset, all that great stuff. And the reason I've been coming on live every day up until this week is because I've been having some really powerful conversations with people in my life. And I wanted to bring those conversations into the light so that you can join in, you can experience them and either add in, you can post your questions here, add insight, and just really start to lean into what's possible for all of us in this time and beyond. So today, I'm so excited for all of you to meet my dear friend, Dana Pierce, who is also a self-love coach and modern day healer. I love that, Dana. And I just love Dana so much. She's just such a beautiful, bright, shining, graceful, loving individual who you're gonna just feel into so many parts of who you are today. At least that's my wish, that's my vision and intention for today. So Dana, say hello and let everyone know who's watching live and later who you are and who you be.
Who I am and who I be. Thank you, Tiffany. I really appreciate that beautiful introduction. This takes a little bit to get used to. Sound and like cameras and like.
Let me give the audience a little background. So it's like we're in a studio right now, right, Dana? Like a digital studio.
It is. I'm not sure where to look. I think I have to look away somewhere because I can't, it's almost too much.
So that's a great segue to let the audience know. We're looking at a couple different things. So if we're looking down or left, it's like the Brady Bunch right now. So
that's exactly it. I love that. I love that.
Appreciate you and know that we are focused on you and we are here for you today. So Dana,
absolutely.
Hello.
Hi. So as Tiffany mentioned, I'm a self-love coach and modern day healer. What does that mean? I blend and weave over a decade's worth of ancient traditional healing modalities with modern day coaching technology. So so it's fun. So we get a bit of the old and a bit of the new, and it's lots of fun. My focus, I was working with women independently up until the last year, and I really found the importance of the inclusion of men in self-love. I had many men asking me saying, but men need self-love too. So, and then I started looking at it from a perspective of relationship and really where we give ourselves away in relationship. And I realized that both men and women on both sides of this are doing this. So that was so that's been my deep dive and where I've really been focusing my attention lately with people. Yeah.
I love that, Dana. And, Dana and I just we have some really good talks, by the way. So I'm so thrilled that we're bringing this one into the light. And, just last week, we talked a lot about that dynamic of feminine and masculine, and just hearing you say it again, just reminded me of we are all one and that we're all human beings. So I would love to hear more about the dynamic of the masculine and the feminine and go a little deeper into that choice to bring men into the fold.
Yeah. So initially when I started working with women, when I got into my coaching, I did healing work for a long time before I stepped into the coaching several years ago. And simultaneously, as I got into my coaching, I was also dismantling a 20-year marriage that I was in. Tiffany knows a lot about that. Because you were sort of part of that and you were such a guiding light for me through that as well. So as I did that, I swung the pendulum to the feminine side and kind of like feminine empowerment and, all of those pieces. And then I started to realize as I got into it more, and I started looking at both sides of it, and I started really realizing that there's a dynamic for both the masculine and feminine, and men and women. And I want to be a little bit careful with masculine and feminine, because we all have masculine and feminine within, right? So it's not like men aren't masculine and women aren't feminine. There's both within, but obviously there's a predominance of men in the masculine and women and feminine in the women, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm struggling a little bit with the echo in my ear.
It's something to get used to. Thank you for acknowledging that. It is definitely something to get used to. So what supported me, Dana, is turning the volume down as far as possible.
Yeah, I have a little bit.
It's trippy, right?
It is. I heard you saying on that on one of the other interviews, and now I'm getting it. Okay, so we were talking about sorry?
It's a new work from home skill.
It is, absolutely. So we're talking about masculine and feminine, men and women, why I brought men into, and sort of defining that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Did I finish the part about why I brought men in?
No.
Okay, good.
Just to recap, you were dissecting that feminine and masculine is not a product of man and woman, that we have both, we are both.
Right.
And kind of going down that train of thought.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what I really wanted to share is there was one of the things that came up to me as I started diving more in, working with men and stuff like that, is that both parties really feel like they give themselves away, and that really surprised me, because of sort of where I came from through the dynamics of being in a very traditional relationship myself. And so just the whole idea of both parties feel like they're not being met in the middle. And now it's coming back to me, because you were talking about unity, right? And the importance of, it is really tricky when you're hearing this echo of yourself. Okay, so unity and the importance of unity, and as I was just started dissecting this whole thing, I started realizing, like, men, there's been a lot of attention on women over the last, several decades, since the women's lib era and all that, like, and I think that is so important, and it's work that I will continue to do. I've actually sort of divided my business into, like, the women and the men, and the intention of the crossover of both, right? And I encourage women to be on my men's page and men to be on my women's page, and finding out, the information on both sides, because it is so important. There's no way that we're going to be able to evolve in relationship. I mean, look at the statistics. We have massive divorce rates, massive, like, relationships are not thriving right now. I talk with young people, I talk with older people who've been in relationship for a long time. They're not happy. I talk to younger people. They're really confused. They're super confused about how do we have, a beautiful relationship? Like, how do we actually have a solid relationship? And so that's, so, and here's my response. Here's my answer as a self-love coach. It all starts with ourselves, right? It all starts with that relationship within, and having that solid foundation within ourselves. And then we can. Yeah, and then we can really have healthier relationships with others.
I love that. I mean, how powerful. And so, Dana, let's go there. So let's start with self. And, for the feminine and masculine, where do we begin? Do we begin with accessing or just acknowledging where we are in the moment? Like, finding out if we are leaning more feminine or more masculine, because what I'm hearing you say is that, we get to acknowledge both parts and understand that we are both parts. So me as a woman, I mean, I personally know that I've accessed my masculine. Yet you had said something really powerful last week, that some of us women have lost the access or haven't been accessing our feminine as much, when it comes to relation, when it comes to ourselves. So starting with self, walk us through some of the tools or concepts or your thoughts around accessing both and why both are important for self.
Right. So let's kind of start with what is masculine and feminine, because some people might not really understand this. So the dynamics of the feminine or the qualities of the feminine are, they're creative, they're movement, they're when we think of, and I don't want to get too into it, but feminine is Shakti energy. So it's like the goddess, right? It's like this, but it's really about creation, and it's about and for the men that have that in them, it's like, it's not about being feminine. It's not about being, being girly. It's about just tapping into your creativity, tapping into what are some other qualities? Like multitasking is a very feminine quality, right? So it's sort of that creativity, and it's sort of, but it's right. The masculine is very action driven, so it's more linear. It's very straightforward action. So again, we need both. We need to be creative, to be in action, especially in business. I know that a lot of your followers are business oriented, right? Like this is, so it's really, it is important that we have both and we're accessing both. So what you and I were talking about is, as women have gotten more into, the workforce and into things like that, and into, like, there's a lot of single women out there that are raising kids and whatever. I mean, I'm one of them now. We ultimately, we end up having to bring in a lot more of our masculine. Our masculine is action. Like, I'll give you an example. I went out to start my truck last night, and my truck's dead. I don't have a guy to come and, do you know what I mean? Like, so I have to start figuring out how to do those things myself, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. But we're tapped into, I think when the women's lib era came in, women really started to tap into their masculine more and more and more. And again, it's not that it's wrong. The challenge with it, though, is the more we're tapped into both sides, and the more we're tapped into our masculine, the less we're able to be in a receiving mode. Because feminine is, like I say, is open, it's receiving. So we're just sort of taking care of stuff by ourselves, and we're doing what we need to do, and we're taking care of business. And unfortunately, from a relationship perspective, it doesn't allow, there's no space for the masculine or a man to kind of step into that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And this is so, for me, this has been eye-opening, and it's been very valuable. I'm a single woman as well. And, I tend to, operate with both feminine and masculine, but I know when I feel authentically, great, if you will, in a relationship, it's when I'm in my feminine, like when I'm leaning into and being feminine. So I appreciate that. So let's unpack that even further. So how do we identify if we're leaning more feminine or more masculine, and how do we access both, and how do we know to, how to shift in these moments?
Right. And I want to also talk a little bit about the other side in the men, and what I found in the men. Mm-hmm. So how do we shift as women? I mean, it's really interesting. I think it's, for me, what it's been is a felt sense. It's become a knowing of when I'm in that more action oriented, like, if you want to think of it again from a relationship perspective, like, are we making the phone calls? Are we sort of coming, do you know what I mean? Are we coming forward with the men? Are we, taking well, he's not calling, so I'm just going to do it, or whatever? Or are we allowing, right? Are we just sort of stepping back and just allowing, right? And allowing the masculine, or the man, to kind of step in and be a leader. Like, this is a really big part of what I talk about, and the program that I'm actually creating at the moment is leading men. because as I was alluding to, or when I started, is there's a flip side to this. So one of the things that's happened for men, as I'm really diving more deeper and deeper into this, is in realizing that men have actually almost overstepped into their feminine.
Wow.
So, and there's a whole environmental and sort of sociological thing that's happened. I mean, there's so many books out there today that you can read on this. And what happened was, in the industrial age, the dads started going to work, right? And left the boys at home to be raised by the moms, which is great, in many ways. And then also the teachers in the schools were predominantly women. And we kind of lost that masculine, what's the word I'm looking for? That masculine, where the boys used to be out with the dads in the fields or doing the work and stuff like that. And there was that was how they learned how to be masculine, how to be in the, and instead they started being raised by women and spending more and more of their time with the women. And it created an entire dynamic of men who are women pleasers.
Ooh. And for most of us women, that doesn't sound like a bad thing. But
right.
What's the concern?
What's the catch? And this, I love that you said that, because as I'm working in a dynamic with this myself, I'm kind of the same way. I'm like, okay. And I'm also aware as a woman how, and I want to be really careful with this, but how easy it is to get what I want in a relationship, or what I think I want in a relationship. And the M word, manipulate, kind of comes into play a little bit, right? It's like, it's actually quite easy, because again, we've attuned ourselves so well to the masculine and the feminine as women, then we can be that driving force, and we can be very demanding and very okay, this is what I need and I want it now, and like that. And if you've got a nice guy or a people pleaser guy on the other side, then they're just going to go, okay, sure. Here's the challenge. There's a couple of things. One is that innately men are internally masculine. So what happens is the men start to get very frustrated, because again, they've lost themselves. They've lost that sense of their masculine, and they're trying to please, but they're not getting anywhere, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that reminds me of that old saying, happy wife, happy life. Like, that's what that just reminded me of.
And that's exactly it. That's their sort of their MO, their motto is happy wife, happy life. But the truth is, I want to flip this around again too, because if I ask most women what they're attracted to in a man, would they say a people pleaser? Are you going to say a people pleaser? No, it's the bad boy. It's the rebel. It's the guy that keeps you guessing and that you're not right. It's the masculine. So I don't feel like we've emasculated men. I don't feel like I don't, whatever. I mean, each relationship is their own, but it's like I started to see this overshadowing. And so what ends up happening is you get very aggressive behavior from men, because they feel like like I said, they feel like they're giving, like there's nothing they can do to please that other person, right? Because you're still going to have your bad days. And as the woman, on the other side, you're still having your whatever. It's like, and they're trying to please you to get something in return. They want, they want this sense of ease and happiness or whatever. And I think really they want to be able to just be who they are. And this again kind of falls into why it's so important for us to be fulfilling ourselves, right? Like us to be where we need to be solid in our own happiness. Happiness is our own responsibility. It is nobody else's responsibility, and we can't make somebody else happy, right? So happy wife, happy life, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, the way I operate is like, I'm only happy if you're happy. Like, it can't be a one-sided thing. That's just the thing that popped up.
Yeah.
And what I just heard you say is about responsibility. is that we are each responsible for our own happiness. It is within us, it's not outside us. We're not getting it from others. We are accessing it from within.
Right.
And, you know, one of the biggest tools that just popped up for me is conversations, you know, in that giving and getting kind of dance.
Yeah.
We're not mind readers. I feel like we're in the 80s, Dana. Like the mind,
Yeah.
like, who do you think I am, a mind reader? And that's
Yeah.
like how a lot of people operated. And, you know, if you're still operating that way, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, if you're looking for a way through, you might get to have a conversation. And,
Right.
you know, and what Dana is sharing is that that conversation might be first with yourself, that you get to connect with yourself and see what is it that I'm giving. Maybe do like that column, fold a piece of paper. This side is what I'm giving, what I'm getting, and then below what I'm not giving, what I'm not getting. Because that's also adds to the conversation. Because I know for me, when conversations are challenging, or I perceive them as, you know, like your heart, like, oh my gosh, this is not a conversation I really want to have. Yet, what I'm experiencing is not what I want to be experiencing either. So I get to pay a price, and the price I'm going to pay is having this conversation. And if the conversation feels like it's in that challenging category, for me, how I connect with myself is connecting through like getting my thoughts out and really going there with what I'm giving, what I'm getting, what I'm not giving, what I'm not getting real. Because it's the self connection and that responsibility piece that you had mentioned as well.
Right. So I love this. So the two things that are coming up for me from what you're saying, and these are absolutely vital, is identify. I just had this conversation last night. It's brilliant. It's identifying what you need, right? Identifying your own needs. And the other person needs to identify theirs. And then you're 100% correct. Then from there, it's just communication. Yeah. It's an open line of communication. It's an open, and there is a vulnerability to that, right? And that is intimacy. That is true intimacy. Intimacy has nothing to do with sex. Intimacy is, well, not nothing to do with sex, but it's not sex. It is that that willingness to really open ourselves vulnerably and transparently with another person and say, you know, this is what's happening. This is what's happening for me. And, you know, I had an interesting conversation with somebody last night, and the beautiful thing is when you start to establish this in a relationship, this sort of communication in a relationship, is I didn't know what the answer was. I didn't even really know what the problem was. I just knew that I was out of alignment, that there was something that was happening in this particular relationship. And you can use this in friendships as well as intimate relationships, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I knew something was out of alignment, and it had been bothering me for some time. I'd gone in and sort of checked myself, like, what's my stuff here? Where am I? Like, am I feeling triggered? Am I whatever? And it was like, no. But, and I worked, you know, I did whatever work I needed to. And it was like, even when that was over, I still kind of felt this. And what would, like, so I say out of alignment, and I want to make sure that, you know, people understand that. It's sort of that feeling of just something's off. You know, it's not fear. It's not like gripping or contracted. It's more just like something's just not quite right. It's very much your intuition, right? It's kind of your gut. Like, something's just not working here for me in this dynamic, in this relationship. And I love that I was able to step into this conversation with this person and say, and I couldn't even identify. And I actually said that right up front. I couldn't even really identify specifically, like, did I need more of this or less of this, or what was happening? I couldn't, but I just opened it up and I said, and there's something's off for me here. And it was so awesome to be able to have that dialogue with someone. Do you know what I mean? To be able to, and they were like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Tell me more. And he shared with me as well how that was landing for him, like that there was some, you know, he had some concerns about what he was hearing and whatever, you know, which was fair. And I was so grateful afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I might have lost you on Facebook. Excuse me. Yeah, on Zoom. Are we still? So thank you everyone who's joining us live on
Sorry,
Instagram.
guys.
Oh, there we go. We're back on.
Okay, we're back. Okay, perfect. Yeah, what was I going to say?
Well, what I'm hearing, just to recap what I was.
Let's do a recap because you're great at that.
Yeah, is you had this powerful conversation. What a great example too. That, and I want to highlight the piece that was so vulnerable. Is I'm not even sure what's out of alignment right now. I'm unsure what I need or what's causing this feeling. And that is the courage it takes to be vulnerable, to just say, something's off and I can't put my finger on it right now in this moment. Yet I'm not going to wait to have this conversation. Like, I don't have to have this concrete thing to have a conversation yet. Sometimes we're just off, and it could be you want more communication, and the fact that it's we don't necessarily need to wait until we can put our finger on it. So I love that piece. And, if we go back a little bit more, the fact that these are very intimate conversations, very intimate. And thank you for distinguishing between physical intimacy and just the real true essence of intimacy. Intimacy is, in my experience, vulnerable. It's just a vulnerable trust. And it's not trusting so much the other person, it's really trusting yourself to open up and express what's going on in the moment, and not being attached to the other person or yourself, like being or experiencing it in any sort of way. So thank you for bringing the intimacy piece in, because that is a tool. Intimacy is a tool when it comes to, accessing the feminine, the masculine, like
right. And all relationships, family, friends, everything, right? That it is that willingness to kind of, just be vulnerable and say, hey, what's up here? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. So
I know what I wanted to share on that too, because what I wanted to share is, so this is the work that I am really stepping into, is helping from the men's perspective, is to really help them to stand in their truth, to really connect more into their masculine. And this is the dynamic of the conversation I was having, is because I'm having a conversation with somebody who is a leading man, who is holding space in a really masculine way, to be able to, and like I said, he's great in his feminine, like he's all over the place, but he has this like there's this strength that comes from, so I love to, I think of it this way, like the masculine is sort of that stability. It's that the pole sort of in the center, right? It's that foundation piece. And the feminine is sort of what comes around it, if that makes sense, right?
again,
so the masculine is like, I kind of think of it like the like the pillar or the power, the kind of the foundation piece in the center.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Shiva. And most people think Shiva's the feminine, but that's actually Shiva. And then the Shakti, the feminine, is what kind of moves around it, right? And so, and I will say this too, when you have a leading man, a man who is really in his masculine and is okay with that, he's not trying to fix you, he's not trying to please you, he's not trying to whatever, he's just standing in his truth. The beautiful thing is then as women, we get to, and I just got goosebumps everywhere, then we get to actually flow, and we get to be in our feminine and our creation, and we get to sort of be in our, in our goddess, or in our whatever. And we get to be, when we get to come in and have those conversations, like I texted this friend afterwards, and I was like, wow, thank you so much for holding that space for me to be able to step in vulnerably. And because not only did I got to go deeper in myself, as well as we deepened our connection and our friendship as well.
It's beautiful. Beautiful. So any other takeaways with, connecting to ourselves and really the masculine, feminine, and how we each own and have access to the masculine and feminine, and kind of what that means for maybe even where we are right now and navigating through this.
Right. So yeah, particularly today, I mean, there's a lot of challenges that we're facing, right? With the uncertainty and the unknowing. And, I was thinking about that this morning as I was, preparing to come on here. And I was thinking, I mean, the unknown is like one of the greatest challenges that we face as individuals. So now we're gonna kind of step away from the men and women, masculine, feminine, in a way, and just kind of dive into ourselves, right? And this is where I come from as a self-love coach. I'll give you here's another example that came up for me this morning was when I was laboring with my children. After my first child, I identified that when I knew that there was a certain time frame that the contraction would end, like when I knew that there was an end result and I knew what that was, then I was okay, right? And I knew, okay, I just got to power through till I get there, right? And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we're facing today is there's no certain end here. There's a lot of unknown. And I think that can leave us in this, and just to identify, like, I think that can really leave us in a place of like, holy cow, like, how do we navigate this? What do we do? Somebody's saying exactly, like, yes, it's really, and for me, having that relationship with myself, and I do want to share, I'm thinking at the time, I do want to share a few tools and strategies with this, but having that relationship with myself and having developed that relationship with myself has been paramount in my ability to stay as level as possible. And I just want to say, even with a massive toolbox of like over a decade of meditation practices and all sorts of stuff, I still have my days. I'm still having my time. I've got 3 kids. I'm navigating, community, my business. I'm trying to, we're trying to, be supportive in all ways that we can. And so we all have so one of the most important things for me is going inside, like going within. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, let's move into that. So, because I definitely want to share all your gifts, all your wisdom with everyone who's watching now and later.
Yes.
So going inside, unpack that for because let's just talk to the people who may not even know what that means. And
Absolutely.
kind of like support them in what that means to go inside.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the first things is beginning to identify the voice or voices inside of you. A lot of times we think that those voices that are going on are us, like the real us. Mm-hmm. And Michael A. Singer wrote an amazing book called The Untethered Soul. And he, in this very simple term, helps people understand that we are not those voices. And I know that might sound really weird. You're like, yeah, but they're in my head. And yeah, they are. And they're different parts of your psyche, but they're not really the actual who you are. Mm-hmm. The who you are is the witness, is the person listening. So I kind of feel like when I can step back, when I can slow things down, and we'll talk a little bit about that, and step back and actually just witness the voices with curiosity, right? And just go, okay, that's interesting, or okay, where did that come from? Or so it's sort of like taking a spectator's view at what's going on in your own mind, right?
There's a lot of power in that because you're not letting yourself become the voice or listen to the voice as if it's telling you something. Right. There's a lot of power. You're holding on to your power, and it's graceful to just, okay, notice with curiosity and, what's next? I can choose to become whatever the voice is telling me or saying to me. I could take it, or I could just use it or just notice it and say, that's interesting.
Yeah. And I love this because you and I both have this training. And I think this is important to kind of say as well, that those voices are there to protect you. they're not there to like freak you out. They're there. The positive intention or the goal of those voices is to protect you and keep you safe.
Mm-hmm.
And the challenge with that is keeping you safe means just doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over, whether it was positive or not, whether it got you the result you wanted or not, it kept you alive. And that's really how our brains work. I mean, we're a very evolved species in some ways, and in other ways, we're pretty primitive.
Well, yeah, and I really love the fact that, wellness has grown into the space of the mind, body, and soul, or the mind, body, and spirit, that we're so much more than just the mind. And
Yes.
that sometimes those voices are coming from the body. The voices might be coming from your soul or your spirit. And there's so many different layers, but we do tend to latch on to the mind's conversation. So thank you for presenting that and bringing that forward.
Yes. So, and those are some of the self-care pieces that I love that you brought that up, because those are some of the self-care pieces that I talk about as well. Is like getting into our body, moving our body, identifying what's happening in our body, right? Allowing the endorphins that we can get from movement, from activity, to help. And it does help the brain, right? It helps bring on more happiness, more joy, more, because we get the chemical endorphins.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, the like you said, the brain or the mind has this way of keeping us safe and having us do things same over and over again. That movement creates an interruption to that, a beautiful interruption. Like it creates like, okay, I'm not gonna let this thought or this conversation take over. It's as simple as standing up. It's not like doing a 45-minute workout. It could be as simple as just standing up.
Yeah.
And then walking and then taking it from there. So I love that, Dana.
And I love what you're saying, because it is so important to keep it simple. It's not about, like you said, going to the gym or going to the whatever. It can be something as simple as standing up, like you said. And I love to use dance, or, I often say to people, like, find something that you love to do and just do it every day. It doesn't have to be exercise, right? It can be any kind of thing, just enough to sort of get your heart rate up and sort of get yourself going a little bit, right? It makes such a difference.
I love that. Just the simplicity of it. Because sometimes, our brain also likes to overthink things and overanalyze things, which keeps us sitting here doing nothing.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, like, for those of you in the audience who don't know, I'm also a soul cycle instructor. And one of the things I really love about that experience is it's so like dynamic. It's not just you on a bike. I mean, the music is loud, the lights are off, like the things are going, we're moving, we're doing different things. And it's all to take you out of your mind and connect you to your body and your soul, where that's the gift you get in the moment, rather than thinking. It gives you kind of the pause. And the dancing for me does that as well. Especially if it's just like out of spirit, meaning like there's a song playing and I want to dance, like, because sometimes dancing in these days could mean a dance class. So we're not necessarily saying it's a dance class. It could just be turn on the music and move your body. So I love that. So what are some other, tools and resources that you wanted to share with the audience?
Sure. So, one of the main ways that I go inside is, and I do choose to do this in the mornings myself, but you can do it whenever and anytime throughout the day. And it was something that I wanted to share. If you're interested, is just doing an absolutely simple work. So that was one of the pieces that I got from my teachers, that I've studied for years and years and years, is to really to work with breath work. So I have a vast toolbox of all sorts of different types of breath work and whatever. And what I've really realized is, as we step in, and again, this is how I sort of bridge the gap to the modern day, is it really, all of that is beautiful if that's how you're inclined and that's something that you're passionate about. And again, it has been something that I've been passionate about, so great. But the truth is it's sort of like the movement that you were just saying. We really don't have to do this for a long time. We don't have to do this. We don't have to sit down and have an hour to meditate in the morning. It really can be just as simple as just dropping in, right? Yeah. Kind of listening to them. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no. And I'm like,
oh, I've lost you.
I'm gonna try it right now. Like a simple.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. We got you.
Spaghetti-o.
We hear you.
I've lost the audio.
We can hear you. Those watching on Instagram, can you hear? I know you can hear me. Can you hear Dana at the moment? If anybody, Dana, can you talk and say something? Yeah.
One second.
Live show. Now we have feedback on your end. Cool. Okay. So I think if you turn the volume down on your computer a little bit, just to like the halfway point, it kind of alleviates some of that.
I'm just trying to get my headset back on so that we can get that going.
So for those of you who are joining us live, just popping on now, I am talking with my friend, Dana Pierce, who is a self-love coach and a modern day healer. We started this interview off with talking about the feminine and masculine and how we embody both, and really talking about the giving and receiving aspect of relationship and how to navigate through that by first connecting with ourselves, connecting with what we've been giving, what we've been receiving, what we haven't been giving, what we haven't been receiving, and then really bringing that into the light with conversations. And Dana was also walking us through some tools, just some simple self-care tools of movement. Sometimes when we feel triggered or we feel stuck or we're just not in our authentic self, we tend to let that kind of run the show. So Dana was also walking us through that the conversations that we have internally, that some of it is our authentic self, and some of it just is a story our mind is making up. And I love that piece of how you reminded us how that story that our mind is making up is just to protect us. It's not to harm us, and it is our choice to believe it. And the tool you gave us was to just sit back and observe it, be the observer, and notice what the conversation is with curiosity, rather than leaning in and like listening and thinking that is you. And even if like a piece, let's just say sometimes the mind it's telling us something that's the truth, and it's okay. Like, we're not perfect individuals. We're not perfect human beings. We are doing our best at any given point. And, some of the other pieces she shared was moving our body. And we just moved into the breathwork piece, where